for decades, Johnson & Johnson, I mean, that name has just been synonymous with trust, right? With care. It's a name that's really deeply ingrained in all of us.
Absolutely.
We've seen that iconic red logo, everywhere. Bathrooms, medicine cabinets, hospitals even. But what if those very products, the ones designed supposedly for our well-being, think about baby powder, medicine, surgical tools, what if they actually concealed hidden dangers?
Yeah.
And the true costs were sort of buried under this unquestionable reputation.
Well, that's the core of it, isn't it? This isn't just speculation.
No.
This is the shocking reality that Gardiner Harris really unveils in his book, No More Tears, The Dark Secrets of Johnson & Johnson. It's quite the read.
It really is.
And this narrative, it fundamentally challenges how we understand corporate ethics and, frankly, the systems that are supposed to protect our health. It forces you to confront this really uncomfortable question. How far will a company actually go to protect its image, its profits, especially when, human lives are literally hanging in the balance?
Yeah, and the decisions they make have these devastating real-world consequences.
Exactly. The book compels us to look beyond just, individual mistakes. It suggests a profound and really disturbing pattern of behavior.
And that challenge, that pattern, that's exactly what we want to unpack today. Because for so many of us, J&J, it felt like family.
It did.
A brand just woven into daily life, touching, 1 billion people every day. Johnson's baby powder, Tylenol, Band-Aids, even surgical sutures.
Things you don't even think about.
Right. And this company, they cultivated this image of unparalleled ethical leadership. It seemed almost etched in stone by that famous 1943 credo.
Ah, yes, the credo.
The one stating, we believe our first responsibility is to the patients, doctors, nurses, parents, and others who use Johnson & Johnson's products and services.
A powerful statement.
Hugely powerful. And this is the same company that, back in '82 at the Tylenol crisis, they were praised by Harvard Business School. Swift recall, tamper-proof packaging.
The gold standard.
Exactly. The gold standard of crisis management.
Yeah.
That's the perception most of us grew up with. And honestly, it's probably what most people still remember.
And that very perception, that widely held belief, is what makes this deep dive so compelling and, let's be honest, pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
So our mission today is really to pull out the most crucial insights from No More Tears, to offer you, our listener, kind of a shortcut to understanding the complex and often, deeply troubling evolution of this corporate giant.
Right.
We're going to trace J&J's journey from that, revered ethical leader to the shocking stuff Harris exposes, uncovering what he calls a slow-motion metamorphosis from ethical paragon to something far more sinister.
That's a heavy phrase. Slow-motion metamorphosis.
It is. And to understand how a company gets to that point, the book introduces this really powerful concept. The social normalization of deviance. Now, that sounds academic, but it's not just jargon. It explains how small, seemingly tiny ethical compromises, when they add up over years and they become accepted within the company culture, they slowly shift what's seen as normal.
Right, what's acceptable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Even
when those actions down the line lead to, unthinkable harms. And this concept, you'll see, it echoes through pretty much everything we're going to discuss today.
Okay, let's start then. Let's begin by unraveling that very foundation of trust. Because the first fraying threads of that golden image, they start with one of its most iconic products. You mentioned the credo, that 1943 statement. It was foundational, right? Prioritizing users, patients, caregivers above all else. Supposedly. And then the Tylenol crisis in '82 seemed to prove it. Cyanide-laced bottles, tragic deaths, and J&J's response. Immediate, decisive.
They pulled millions of bottles, a huge, costly recall.
Which at the time was hailed as, the benchmark for corporate responsibility. Harvard Business School calling it the gold standard.
Right. It cemented that reputation. Company puts people over profits. A shining example.
That narrative, that almost mythic status, it's crucial because it sets up the profound contrast the book then reveals.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the golden egg, as the book calls it, Johnson's baby powder.
Yes.
The book really details how this product was, it was the emotional cornerstone of the company, wasn't it?
It really was. It created this incredibly strong, almost nostalgic bond with mothers, with babies. That scent.
Oh yeah, that distinctive floral scent. So many people recognize it instantly. from childhood or their own kids.
It wasn't just powder in a bottle. It was part of, rituals of care, part of childhood itself, family life for generations. It just symbolized purity, safety.
And this is exactly where that pristine image just starts to shatter.
Right. Because the book uncovers these deeply disturbing internal documents, and they go back, way back to the 1960s.
Or 60s, yeah.
Showing that their talc, the main ingredient in the baby powder, was contaminated with asbestos.
Asbestos, a known carcinogen.
A known carcinogen, linked to mesothelioma, ovarian cancer. Just think about that for a second. Decades, literally decades before the public really knew about these risks, J&J knew.
Wow.
So the critical question becomes, why wasn't this information just, shared? Why was it actively suppressed for so long while the product was still being used on babies, the most vulnerable?
It's horrifying.
It really is. It wasn't just a mistake. It exposes this calculated, decades-long deception right at the heart of their brand, using that image of innocent baby care to mask a deadly secret.
Leveraging trust.
Exactly. The insight there is just how deeply a corporation can embed deceit within those sacred spaces of consumer trust, making parents, unwitting participants in this huge public health gamble.
And it wasn't just passive, was it? They didn't just withhold the info. The book details this systematic, aggressive campaign.
Oh, yeah. To discredit any scientist, any researcher who even dared to expose the asbestos link, Harris calls it a relentless whack-a-mole strategy. Yeah. Every time a study came out or a scientist raised concerns, boom. J&J deployed its massive resources to dismiss it, challenge it, undermine the findings.
Is there a specific example of that?
Oh, a particularly bad one the book details is how J&J specifically pressured Mount Sinai School of Medicine, a really prestigious institution.
Right.
They pressured them to retract research linking talc to asbestos. This wasn't just about discrediting one person. This was influencing a leading medical institution, silencing scientific dissent at the highest levels.
The impact of that.
Profound. For scientific integrity, obviously. It created this environment where truth could just be squashed, public health put at risk, all for corporate interests. And Harris shows this campaign, this obfuscation, it was so effective.
How so?
Well, it left journalists wary. They didn't want to touch the topic for years, which just contributed to the public having no idea about the dangers. It fundamentally undermined the checks and balances meant to protect us,
Allowing J&J to just control the narrative, create doubt around any claim that contradicted their official safety line.
Precisely.
And then the ultimate confrontation comes years later. In court.
Yep. A J&J executive finally, under oath, has to admit that those previous statements about there being absolutely no asbestos in their talc.
They were false.
They were false. Just think about the impact of that admission. It's this undeniable crack in the foundation of trust they'd spent decades building.
And for the consumer, the person who used this stuff for generations on their babies, believing in J&J's safety promise.
For them, it meant that symbol of purity was actually something the company knew carried a hidden, dangerous risk, which led, of course, to tens of thousands of lawsuits.
Ovarian cancer, mesothelioma.
Tragically connecting their illness directly to years of using Johnson's baby powder. The sheer scale of the suffering, the legal battles, it just reveals the devastating real-world cost of decades of this corporate deception.
It's staggering. And these tactics suppressing science, controlling information, they didn't stop with baby powder, did they? Chillingly, the book suggests echoes even in that story that became their big PR win.
The Tylenol poisonings. Yeah.
We all know the narrative, right? 1982, the gold standard of crisis management. J&J's finest hour.
That's the story. Recall, new packaging, brilliant PR, emerged with their reputation maybe even stronger.
But the book challenges this. It says, maybe look beyond the surface of that finest hour.
Exactly. It asks, what if the tamperings weren't just some random madman like the public was told? What if they were hints of something deeper, something wrong within J&J's own distribution system?
Could that celebrated story have conveniently overlooked things?
That's the unsettling question the book raises. Could it paint a far more complex picture?
And it gives us reasons to question it, like revealing that wholesale boxes of the cyanide-laced Tylenol were found days before the public even knew about the deaths.
Right, not just single bottles on shelves, whole shipping boxes left in a parking lot.
That detail from Harris's reporting, it strongly suggests a wider systemic problem, right? Within J&J's supply chain. Maybe the tampering happened before it even got to the stores.
Which is a huge implication. Yet somehow this crucial evidence was, conveniently overlooked, or at least downplayed by investigators at the time.
So the focus shifted away from any potential internal issue?
And squarely onto an external anonymous threat, which, conveniently, allowed J&J to maintain that narrative of being the blameless victim.
Wow.
And then there's the truly astonishing twist the book brings out. Local police had apparently identified a likely killer.
Really?
Yeah, a disgruntled former employee, someone with easy, intimate access to J&J's distribution network.
Okay, that sounds like a strong lead.
You'd think so. But this lead was largely ignored by the FBI. The book explores the reasons, suggesting they were far more interested in pursuing this, high-profile extortion case involving a mysterious letter.
Instead of the maybe less sensational but more probable internal threat.
Exactly. And that oversight is critical, because it let J&J stick to their finest hour story, when maybe the danger was much closer to home.
And Harris calls this the bitter irony.
Yeah, the bitter irony that the tainted Tylenol might have inadvertently benefited from the warm feelings people had for another contaminated product.
Johnson's baby powder.
Johnson's baby powder, which, unbeknownst to the public, was carrying its own hidden carcinogenic secret. The narrative control J&J achieved was just immense, redirecting attention, accountability, away from their own potential failings.
Further solidifying that normalization of deviance you mentioned earlier.
Precisely. It just became part of how they operated.
So as the years go by, J&J doesn't just stick to consumer products. They make this big shift.
Right, into the highly profitable world of prescription drugs.
And the book details how, in this world, that line between ethical marketing and, outright criminality, it gets dangerously blurry. Sometimes it seems to just disappear.
Yeah, this wasn't just about adding product lines. This was entering a different regulatory world. Higher stakes for patient safety, complex conditions, life or death decisions involved.
And Harris really digs into Procrit, that blockbuster anemia drug for cancer patients.
Right. Initially praised, for boosting red blood cell production. But as the book reveals, J&J knew. They were acutely aware of multiple studies showing it could actually accelerate tumor growth.
Accelerate tumors? In cancer patients?
Yes, and significantly increase risks of heart attacks and strokes, especially at higher doses than originally recommended.
So this wasn't some minor side effect?
No. This was a drug meant to help cancer patients, potentially harming them actively, exacerbating their condition, introducing new deadly risks. And you have to ask, how could a company with that credo?
Patient responsibility first.
How could they knowingly put vulnerable patients at such grave risk?
And it gets worse, because the book says they didn't just know. They actively suppressed that deadly data for years.
Yes. Chilling details of how this vital information was buried, misrepresented, ignored. Harris suggests this willful suppression potentially led to, one epidemiologist privately estimated hundreds of thousands of needless deaths.
Hundreds of thousands.
Imagine the scale of that. It's not just a few errors. It's a systemic, prolonged pattern. Withholding info from doctors, from patients. A calculated decision, prioritizing profits over lives, leading to just tragic outcomes on an almost unimaginable scale.
The book talks about internal memos, discussions where the dangers were known but just strategically sidelined.
Exactly. Sidelined to protect the drug's massive market share.
Unbelievable. And then there's the financial scheme on top of it all.
Oh, this part is truly staggering. J&J, working with Amgen, the original developer, actively encouraged doctors and hospitals to bill Medicare for free drug samples they were given.
Wait, bill the government for free samples?
Effectively, yes. Stealing from taxpayers. It enriched the doctors, who were then incentivized, through these, let's call them illicit schemes, to overprescribe the very drug they knew could cause severe harm.
So it's like they called it Miracle Grow for cancer.
But at a devastating human cost. Both in lives lost and public funds being siphoned off, the ethical implications are just. They're almost beyond comprehension.
Exploiting the whole system. Science, government funding, doctor incentives.
All for financial gain, regardless of the lethal consequences. It paints this picture of a company just willing to manipulate every angle.
And that pattern, the aggressive, questionable marketing, it continues with another drug, Risperdal.
Right, the antipsychotic. The book notes Risperdal really wasn't any better than cheaper, older alternatives. Some even had fewer side effects.
But J&J marketed it aggressively anyway.
Oh, yeah. And specifically for unapproved uses. Targeting children and the elderly, two incredibly vulnerable groups, where the risks are often magnified And, informed consent is complicated.
Off-label promotion, which is illegal.
Highly illegal. And the book really lays bare how systematic this was.
So how do they market it so effectively then? Against the rules, against the evidence.
They used the strategy called sell to the symptoms, which was, frankly, morally bankrupt.
Sell to the symptom.
Yeah. Sales reps were trained. Don't pitch for specific diagnoses. Pitch if a patient shows any symptom of anxiety, hostility, agitation, even mild behavioral stuff. Risperdal was the cure.
Even for toddlers, 1 or 2 years old.
Yes. Pushing a powerful antipsychotic onto toddlers for things like tantrums or fidgeting, it completely disregarded careful diagnosis, individual needs, long-term side effects, all for market penetration.
Did they do other things to push it?
Absolutely. The book details how J&J funded ghost-written articles in medical journals, articles written by them or their agents, but published under doctors' names that downplayed risks and exaggerated benefits, just muddying the waters for doctors trying to make informed decisions.
And the consequences of this.
Yeah.
Especially for children.
Horrific, particularly for young boys who developed permanent breasts. Gynecomastia.
Permanent breasts.
Yes, and the book reveals the company knew about this devastating side effect from early clinical trials, but they actively concealed it.
How? How do you conceal something like that?
Statistical manipulation. Downplaying how often it happened. Outright fabrication of data in studies published in prestigious journals. They went to extraordinary lengths to hide the truth, to minimize these visible, painful, psychologically sparring consequences for kids.
Just turning a blind eye to the suffering.
Exactly. And the lawsuits detailing these harms just show the depths of that deception.
There's that quote in the book.
Oh, the quote, yes. In a truly jarring moment that just perfectly captures the ethical decay, a J&J executive, confronted in court about the repeated deception regarding Risperdal, declared under oath that, quote, honesty is a very broad term.
Honesty is a very broad term.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just an offhand remark, right? It reveals this deeply ingrained corporate culture where truth itself was fluid, where profit trumped any traditional idea of ethics or honesty, or even basic empathy.
That normalization of deviance again just allowed these terrible actions to be rationalized, continued.
It permeated the whole system.
And as if that wasn't enough.
The
opioid crisis. We often think Purdue Pharma, OxyContin.
Right. That's the main name people know.
But the book argues J&J was actually a kingpin in the epidemic, operating on multiple levels.
Their role was surprisingly fundamental, yeah. It wasn't just marketing their own opioids like Duragesic, the fentanyl patch, and doing it with that same false claim of low addictiveness, just like Purdue.
Okay, so they did that too.
Yes. But crucially, they also pioneered the cultivation of super poppies down in Tasmania.
Super poppies.
Yeah. This wasn't just about selling the finished drug. This was about controlling the source material for the crisis. Through their subsidiary, Tasmanian Alkaloids, J&J became the largest supplier of the key active ingredients for nearly half of all opioid pills sold in the U.S.
Half. They supplied the ingredients for half the pill.
Roughly half. Think about the strategic depth there. They weren't just a player, they were a foundational supplier for the whole industry, basically enabling the crisis from the roots up by controlling the raw materials, securing their spot at the very top of the supply chain.
Wow. And what was their strategy in selling their own opioids?
The book says their strategy was to, quote, evolve the value discussion to displace the oxycodone molecule. Meaning strategically shift the market conversation away from the well-known, highly addictive oxycodone drugs like OxyContin and towards their own products, often by, again, downplaying addictiveness or highlighting some perceived benefit.
And this was happening while the death toll was just skyrocketing across the country.
Exactly. Millions becoming addicted, thousands dying. The book really paints this chilling picture of their far-reaching role, a sophisticated, multi-level approach to profiting from addiction, from growing the poppies to pushing the final product, all while strategically minimizing the dangers and maximizing their market share. Corporate complicity on a massive scale that helped fuel a national catastrophe.
It's just layer upon layer, and the pattern continues, doesn't it, into medical devices?
Yes, the pattern of deception and harm keeps going. Now we're talking about devices implanted into people's bodies, promising to improve life, often for severe orthopedic issues.
And the book details the rollout of those faulty metal-on-metal hip implants. Pinnacle, ASR, XL, designed to last decades inside you.
Right. Except J&J knowingly sold these faulty implants that, once inside, started releasing toxic metal shavings. into the bloodstream, into tissues.
Toxic metal shavings.
Yeah, leading to debilitating pain, massive tissue damage, things called pseudotumors. It crippled thousands of people, forced them into agonizing revision surgeries.
And how did these even get approved?
That's another damning part. They got FDA approval by submitting false specifications. And they used the FDA's less rigorous 510K clearance pathway.
The one that lets new devices skip full trials if they're substantially equivalent to old ones.
Exactly. It wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate misrepresentation to rush dangerous products onto the market into unsuspecting patients.
And the profit motive here is just audacious.
It really is. Because when the devices inevitably failed,
Yeah.
J&J profited twice. First, selling the faulty implant. Then, profiting again from the incredibly expensive, painful replacement surgeries needed to fix the mess they created.
Did they tell doctors the implants were faulty?
No. The book describes reps telling doctors the problems they were seeing were unique to them. Maybe surgical error, maybe patient issues, not admitting a systemic flaw in the product.
Well, internally.
Internally, the mantra Harris uncovers was, quote, "We will manage through this." Even as images circulated among surgeons showing alarming and concerning tissue reactions, toxic metallosis, they knew what was happening.
Profiting from their own failures. Failures implanted in people's bodies. It's just...
A profound moral failure. Deeply disturbing, and again, that normalization of deviance just echoes through it all.
And then somehow, it gets even worse. The pro-lift vaginal mesh saga. The book calls it an even deeper moral abyss.
It's hard to fathom, but yes.
Yeah.
This product for pelvic organ prolapse, stress incontinence, J&J launched it despite knowing from early internal studies, pilot programs, that the mesh would cause excruciating chronic pain.
Excruciating pain.
Yes. Persistent bleeding, erosion into other organs, permanent disfigurement. In a significant percentage of women, the dangers were clear internally long before the public horror stories emerged.
But they launched it anyway, without full FDA approval.
Yes, using that same 510K loophole they used for the hips. The book details how they just brazenly dismissed internal pleas from their own engineers, their own medical staff, who were saying, go back into the concept stage, test this properly first.
No, they just pushed ahead.
Pushed ahead, unleashed it on patients. And when confronted later with the devastating complications faced by thousands of women, a top J&J executive called the issues usually minor and well manageable.
Minor and well manageable. To women suffering debilitating lifelong pain, repeated surgeries, disfigurement, lives ruined.
That callous dismissal of patient suffering, it's just a heartbreaking recurring theme, often by people who never experienced it themselves.
And the book details outright corruption here, too.
Oh, yes. Beyond just selling bad products and hiding data, J&J systematically manipulated medical societies, funding them, influencing them, and continued bribery of surgeons, lavish consulting fees, speaking gigs, all to make sure their products got used, even as the evidence of harm piled up.
So it wasn't just a few bad actors.
No, it highlights this pervasive system where profits just trumped patient safety at every single turn. A breakdown of trust between industry, doctors who are supposed to advocate for patients, and the patients left holding the bag, physically, emotionally, financially.
The very structures meant to ensure ethical conduct were just systematically undermined.
Undermined, showing just how advanced their normalized deviance had become.
Which brings us finally almost to the present day. The COVID vaccine.
Right. J&J's big entry into the COVID vaccine race.
Which was widely touted, right, by the media, as this rare shot at redemption.
Exactly. A chance to save humanity, shed the troubled past, be a force for good, prove the credo still meant something. The pandemic was this huge opportunity for them to restore their image. But sadly, the effort was just marred by this familiar, tragic pattern of internal failures.
Like what?
Well, the vaccine development, the rollout, it was plagued by manufacturing failures, significant cross-contamination issues at their Baltimore plant. Millions of doses had to be thrown out. The FDA temporarily shut the plant down.
Not a good look for redemption.
Not at all. And ultimately, the single-shot vaccine itself, despite that initial promise of simplicity, ease of distribution, it proved to have serious clotting risks.
Right. I remember the pause in its use. Warnings.
Exactly, which led to a significant decline in its adoption globally. They struggled to meet production targets, faced quality control issues. Eventually, their market share just dwindled compared to the mRNA vaccines.
So the final verdict on the vaccine.
Once hailed as this global savior, this beacon of hope, it struggled. Its promise was tragically unfulfilled. It mostly receded into the background.
And this ultimate failure in what should have been a chance for ethical leadership, it solidified the legacy of the CEO at the time, Alex Gorski.
Right. Gorski presided over much of this era we've discussed. Decades of criminal marketing, widespread patient harm, preventable deaths under his watch. Yet
he retired to accolades, still celebrated as a humanitarian of the year by big organizations.
That stark contrast between the public perception of J&J and Gorski and the book's revelations about his tenure, it's just staggering. It highlights the immense power of corporate PR, doesn't it? And that huge disconnect between public image and corporate reality.
Okay, let's step back for a moment.
Yeah.
Because the true genius of this book, No More Tears, it's not just the specific bombshells about J&J, it's the profound implications, right, for the whole corporate world.
Absolutely. It forces us to confront this really uncomfortable, disturbing truth that quintessentially American company, the one we admire, the one woven into our lives, was in many ways operating like a criminal enterprise.
And the book meticulously shows how they did it.
How they achieved it.
How did they operate like that, almost with impunity?
Well, precisely because they were shielded by enormous advertising budgets, incredibly clever PR campaigns shaping the narrative, and this powerful, pervasive influence operation, lobbying.
Neutering federal oversight, silencing scientific dissent.
Exactly. They were masters of controlling the story, shaping public perception, influencing regulatory bodies to their advantage, creating this veil of respectability over their actions.
So how does that happen? How does that systematic deviance become normal inside a company that, on the outside, is all about ethical principles?
That's the critical question, and the book argues compellingly it's not just one bad apple or a few corrupt people, it's that social normalization of deviance we talked about.
That gradual process.
Yes, small ethical compromises over decades adding up, incrementally leading to unthinkable harms. Harms that become so ingrained in the corporate culture, they're not even seen as deviations anymore, they're just standard operating procedure.
And the chilling part is the argument that this pattern in J&J, it mirrors the decline of American healthcare itself.
That's the broader, chilling argument. It suggests a systemic issue far bigger than just one corporation. A real wake-up call to the vulnerabilities in how our whole healthcare system is governed and influenced.
So what does this all mean for us? For you, the listener, the consumer, the patient, the citizen relying on these institutions?
Yeah.
This book, it's not just an expose, is it? It's a searing indictment, not just of J&J, but of a system. A system that too often prioritizes profit over people with devastating results.
It really is.
And it forces you to ask that deeply unsettling question. If one of the most admired corporations in the world, a company we literally trusted with our babies, our health, could become what the book calls a killing machine, then what else are we missing? What other hidden dangers are lurking under the surface of products, institutions we rely on every day? How do we even start to uncover them?
And the book doesn't just leave you with the problems, it leaves us with this stark call to action. It emphasizes that the way forward needs radical systemic change. Well, it argues if we want to reclaim the promise of healthcare, protect public health, we have to start by severing those insidious financial ties between industry and medical professionals.
Get the money out of the decision-making.
Exactly. We need to fundamentally reform the regulatory agencies, the FDA, make them truly independent, uncompromised. And crucially, the book demands we start holding corporate executives criminally accountable.
Not just letting them retire with accolades and huge payouts while the company pays a fine.
Precisely. Real accountability for the harms they knowingly inflict. It's a powerful demand for systemic overhaul, pushing for a future where corporate ethics are actually non-negotiable.
No More Tears really is an urgent wake-up call. Shattering those perceptions of trust, exposing that dark underbelly of corporate power few of us really think about. So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this final thought. What small, seemingly innocuous compromises are being made today, right now, in plain sight? Perhaps by companies you trust implicitly. Compromises that could, one day, years from now, lead to unimaginable harms. The power of being informed, of civic engagement, and holding these powerful corporations accountable, well, it rests with you, with the public, and with the stories we choose to pay attention to and amplify.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like this video and share it with your friends and family. Subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Until then, happy listening.